You're listening to the Racking Focus Podcast. Welcome to the second episode of the Racking Focus Podcast. My name is Josiah Blizzard.
And I'm John Doyle. And we're here today. We were planning to go see John Wick 3, but unfortunately John Wick 3 opens next week. And so we are going to just have a little conversation. So Josiah, how do you want to proceed today on our extra bonus special episode 2?
We're going to talk about Game of Thrones and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, specifically for season 8. That's what we should talk about. It's relevant right now. I'm sure you heard of the Starbucks coffee cup incident and some of the other issues with dark screens and things of that nature. So I just wanted to talk to you. You're an avid book reader too, so you have a little bit more knowledge than I do about the show and opinions about character development, that sort of thing. But I wanted to talk to you about Game of Thrones and what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And we kind of do a pros and cons list of what's happening and maybe kind of see what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we can really make sure we talk about is the fact that we come from a perspective that might be different than some pop culture person who's talking about it just from that reference. Yeah. So it sounds like a great conversation. So
cool. Yeah.
What do you want to start with?
I think let's start with a negative because I think
okay.
I think there's more negatives probably right now than there are positives as far as the last 2 episodes go. Right. So my first negative that people are complaining about, and not necessarily just me, it's maybe not my issue because, and you know this, we watched Battle for Winterfell a little bit late.
Right.
I think we missed the streaming by about 2 hours, and we did not see the darkness that everybody else was complaining about. We actually turned out all the lights. We didn't have any kind of blurry, dark screens or anything like that. But
before anyone thinks we're morons, we didn't miss it because we're irresponsible. We missed it because we were at a wedding of a close friend,
and thankfully not a bloody wedding. It was a clean wedding. No one died. But yeah, we missed it by 2 hours, and I think that benefited us because we missed the rush to the stream. But there's a lot of people complaining about this dark episode. You didn't notice anything, did you, on the screen? Like it wasn't dark for you?
So no, I mean, I saw some artifacts in a few places on the screen, sure. But that's part of the compression that's going to happen with streaming. But no, we didn't have any problem seeing the episode at all.
And I think what I've been telling people is that it's not an issue of, it's not the cinematographer's fault. There's people blaming the director and the cinematographer. It's the TV settings, I think, from people. I think it's probably the TV settings and the time you watch it. If you're watching at the same time that 1.5 million other people are watching, you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed with your streaming quality. For instance, though, as far as TV settings go, I had to help my dad fix his TV settings in episode 1.
Right.
He called me. He's like, dude, I can't see anything on the screen. And so I FaceTimed him, changed his TV settings from like picture profile vivid to calibrated. And he said it would like completely changed his entire viewing experience for Game of Thrones. He could see the shadows, he could see the highlights better. And so I think as far as like my opinion goes, I think people need to change their TV settings from vivid or standard to cinema or movie or calibrated. Do you have the same? Are those settings on your TV at home? Are they pretty much similar to like movie or cinema? Or
yeah,
something?
So we have those kind of settings on the TV at home, and one of the things you don't want to do is allow the television to be in some auto setting where it's adjusting of its own accord.
Thinking for itself,
where it's trying to figure out what lights in your room and whatever, because that's going to be a disaster completely in that setting. Right. But we're a culture that's accustomed now to our technology working for us. Yeah. And these guys making this show are not able to think for your TV.
Yeah, right. They don't know what you're using. They don't know if you're using Sony or if you're watching on your phone or if you're watching on a Samsung 65-inch, right? It's the same thing with cinema in general. These guys shooting these episodes aren't shooting on a Red Dragon, right, and putting it in auto mode. God, there isn't an auto mode, I don't think, on Red. But if there was, they're not going to use it. They're going to use their full manual controls to get... They don't let machines think for them. They want to have full control over everything. So change your TV settings right now. Change them to cinema or movie or whatever. Get it off vivid.
Right, and if you have a problem changing your TV settings, what you want to do is call someone who knows how to use a television and do it, and not someone who used a television in 1975, because the technology is different, and there's many other capacities that you can get in this TV now that you want to work with.
Worst case scenario, just Google it, but it'll change your life. So that's one negative that I've been seeing. Let's maybe switch to a positive. Do you have a positive viewpoint on one.
Yeah,
of the
so I'm
episodes.
going to say a strange positive,
Okay.
because I think it's a positive that some people see as a negative, and that's the idea of fan service. It's a fascinating thing to me
Yeah.
that people are upset about fan service in the program or calling things fan service. We have become so aware of our influence on television, or at least our supposed influence, because of the amount of information we can vomit back at the producers. But that information, whether they're looking at it or not, may be inconsequential in their decision making. And some fan service just may be natural progression.
Right.
And some fan service may be service to them as filmmakers,
yeah.
and their own service to their own vision, which may be the same as fandom.
Yeah.
So just because people have said they can't wait till Jamie and Brienne have sex, spoilers for the current episode, or they just desperately don't want Tormund to die.
Right.
Just because people have said that doesn't mean when that doesn't happen, they have committed some act of fan service.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all for fan service. And like you said, I kind of just roll with the punches. Like whatever happens, like I have no control over their filmmaking process. I have no control at all. I can only hope that what they do will make me happy as a viewer. And they kind of have to throw some fan service in there, I think, because there's also times where they go the complete opposite direction. They make you super disappointed in the choices that they're making. So the fan service with Jamie and Brienne getting together, awesome. Fan service with, I would even say Arya killing the Night King is 100% fan service. Like that's something that so many people predicted to happen. It was fun to watch. It came out of nowhere and it was rewarding. So that I would say that's a fan service in a small way. But yeah, they have to do it, or else they're gonna disappoint a ton of people and their ratings are probably gonna drop.
Yeah, and the weight on those guys from HBO is a killer, right?
Yeah.
Like there can be no question that they feel a tremendous amount of pressure to retain viewers and to retain viewers now into sequels, right? Into prequels or continuations.
Well, and retain viewers and keep it on a positive note because you think about the show Lost, for instance, right? Lost was like, this is an awesome show. This is great. And then all of a sudden it just plummets. And now Lost is kind of like, well, they botched it. They messed the whole thing up at the end. Like, what are they doing? So I think there's, like you said, so much pressure on the showrunners that they want to make sure people are happy with the show and they're ending on a solid note, even though there might be things that happen that disappoint the viewers in a way.
And the only thing that I ever really worry about in relationship to that idea is whether or not the characters are acting well outside of their natural character arc. And we actually see events that aren't fan service in the show, where we see much more character disassociation than we do in those moments when people are doing things that may be called fan service. Jamie and Brienne are going to end up together in some way. Whether or not the fact that they have sex or not is what that end should be.
Yeah.
The fact that that relationship consummates is a natural development for both of them.
Right.
Maybe Daenerys being a bad leader is not a natural arc for her. And I'm much more concerned about when a character acts outside of its reasonable character development than I am about some moment that is.
I would say then that's a negative, right? That's definitely something we just transitioned into a negative thing, because I think there is definitely things that are happening that choices characters are making that aren't the choices they would normally make. I think that, look at John. I think John is making some choices, and specifically the big one here is like, why are you saying you're not saying goodbye to Ghost? Why are you not saying goodbye to Ghost? Why are you there's just things that John's doing. I can't even think of specifics right off the bat. Maybe it's deciding to go south.
Not keeping a secret.
Right? That's the most honorable thing, right? Well, and then it transfers over to Sansa, again, not keeping that secret. I think that Sansa's maybe changed a little bit as a character, because you've never seen Sansa a little bit as like honorable Ned Stark. John is definitely that. Like, it's surprising they're actually not father-son. But Sansa's never been like honorable Sansa. So the fact that she's now playing Littlefinger's game, it's almost like she's not even a Stark anymore. So maybe maybe the choice to tell Tyrion isn't too big of a deal, but she's still a Stark, and Starks by nature, I feel like, are just honorable people. She swore on the secret; she's not going to tell. 2 seconds later, she's telling.
Well, and Varys turning his back on Daenerys, who he has been ultimately working for so long.
Yeah, he took Tyrion all the way across the Narrow Sea just to get to her, to back her, and then all of a sudden he's changing his mind. Yeah, super weird.
Yeah, so those moments are moments where that's a discontinuity that's difficult for me to get through. Whereas I don't really care that, if we're going to see Arya get to have sex, like, great, right? Yeah. Those moments are much less disturbing to me.
And that comes with in the writing room, right? So that's, if we're going to break that down to the behind the scenes filmmaking aspect, that's just poor writing. And I don't know who's writing those episodes specifically. It might be...
Well, our showrunners have written a hunk of this material, right?
I feel like any time that Brian Cogman is writing an episode, I feel like I can relax, because what did he write? He wrote episode 2 of this season, and that was so good. So every time Brian Cogman's writing, I can kind of rest easy that there's no weird out of character moments. So anyway, that's a good negative. Just people not making the choices I feel like they should be making as characters based on how you've set them up, right? A positive. God, it's so much easier to think of negatives for this show. Let's think about okay, so a positive for me, I guess, would be they're doing a little bit okay, how do I phrase this? There's full arcs that are closing,
right,
and I really enjoy that. And they're even doing a lot of callbacks to season 1. For instance, in this last episode, the entire feast that's happening in this past episode after they burned all the dead is a straight callback.
Yeah,
to that might have been the first episode. And all I could think about was Jon actually sitting down on the floor near the door, like just not as at the Lord's table. And it's still it's a way more joyous occasion in episode 1 than it is now. Like, the tables have completely turned. But a callback to season 1 like that, and seeing that come full circle for Jon and full circle in a way for Winterfell as a whole. But even seeing like Brienne get knighted and Podrick and Tyrion finally get to chat a little bit. Things like that. Like, I love seeing that. Do you feel the same way?
Completion of the arcs. Yeah, I think it's great. There's issues with that, which I'll talk about later. But I think those completing the arcs are really exciting. Watching the culmination of something we've seen planted well early is what really matters.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is interesting about that feast is that feast has the same secret sitting behind it. So, Kat and Ned don't have the same information about Jon.
Right.
And in this moment, these characters don't have the same information. So Jon is forced to sit by the door because people think he's a bastard. Right. And now he's sitting at the throne of the North, and they don't know that he's a Targaryen. In both cases, there's this really interesting parallel. And so it's great to have that throwback. And ultimately, Daenerys sits in the Catelyn seat, which is an uncomfortable place to be. And she has issues with Jon. Like, there's all this really interesting stuff happening there. And it's, I thought, beautifully rendered and well done. And, individually, those moments between many of those characters were great. That you can quibble some with whatever may have happened between, Sansa and the Hound or whatever that may be bothersome or whatever. Right. But for the most part, I thought there was some real cleverness going on in that. And I like those echoes. And, for me, one of the most exciting things is planting and payoff. Like, it's one of my favorite film things. And so I love when there can be something planted early. I don't think those guys are planting and paying this off. I just think they're taking advantage of well-seeded action.
Right.
And
as in, like, they're looking back at previous episodes and saying, what have we seeded here and there that we can bring full circle?
And we know that they knew the reason why Martin gives them this script to do, or this text to work, why he gives permission,
Right.
because they know the answer, right, of John's parentage.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing that opens the door for them. Well, that means he may have planted that scene to allow us at some later time to experience this parallel, because he's so complex in his writing.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, his books are huge, and he just goes on and on in detail. And I mean, I've thought multiple times, how in the world is this guy mapping out his story? It doesn't seem like I have no idea how he's doing it. Like, there's got to be some crazy flow chart somewhere for each character. But yeah, it's intense, and that's, I guess, in a way, I feel like I've seen the show as they've diverted from his book content,
right,
from the source material. The show has gotten weaker and weaker. Would you agree on that?
I think the show has had many, many more problems. So there's been some great highs, but I think there is this undercurrent of sort of the ship is not sailing smoothly.
Right. Would you say it's being shot through with scorpion arrows?
Perhaps, just out of
maybe
nowhere, scorpion arrows. And certainly, like, I feel like the ground just isn't stable underneath the show. And so we get an episode like episode 2 where things are like hitting every moment. And we get an episode like episode 4 where there's moments where it hits and moments that seem so wrong.
Yeah.
And then we get a giant episode in episode 3 that misses the mark with character and understands spectacle. And so it feels like there's not cohesion.
Yeah.
Which they had from a pre-written text that's so detailed and specific.
Right. So something that bothered me at the end of season 2, episode 2, leading into episode 3, was that they stopped the episode before the fight began. And I feel like they should have gone on for another maybe 15 minutes. I think they should have started the fight, and everything should have played out up until the tidal wave of zombies. And it should have cut, should have slammed to black as the tidal wave of zombies hit the Unsullied and the infantry troops, right?
Yeah.
And that should have been where the episode stopped. That's cutting out some time from episode 3. It means they bring that down to about an hour of time. They don't have to worry about battle fatigue for the viewers as much. I guess it's still an hour of time, right? But and then you can start with a little bit of a jump cut of the forces pulled back maybe to the wall. You don't have to see everything linearly how it happened. You don't have to see. I mean, you still have to show the characters' deaths, who are going to die, but maybe they're dying in a little bit of a different way. And then you have a little bit more time a little more breathing room. If you still wanted to go an hour 20 on Battle of Winterfell, you can do that. You can give a little bit more breathing room if you want to. But I think that the biggest issue for them cutting those 2 episodes in half, right, and stopping before the battle happened in episode 2, is we had so much comedic relief in episode 2. We had so many humorous moments and personal and deep moments with the characters that you completely forget about it the following week. And so it doesn't mean as much to you. At least it didn't mean as much to me.
Yeah.
I kept waiting to get interrupted by a horn blast 3 times, multiple times in episode 2, and it never happened. So I would have liked to have the comedic relief kind of flow into the battle episode a little bit easier. It just felt kind of disjointed in a way for me.
That idea of keeping the stakes really high is what they're thinking about, and that certainly works. And they were trying to play this idea of multiple film styles, right? So they're trying to do horror and action and whatever through the 80 minutes of the work. And one of the things that happens is we don't see that kind of entertainment anywhere.
Yeah.
Like when we watch, like the worst case scenario, a movie like Predator or something, where it's essentially like wall-to-wall violence, still has a big setup. We're not used to Endgame, for goodness sake. No matter, the last battle could be an hour long, but it's not 80 minutes.
No.
And that's a long time to experience, especially so many characters, the risk to their lives, so many characters' outcomes. And we care about a lot of these people, and we want to know what's happening to them. And then people had problems seeing, and so then it makes it completely chaotic. Whereas I think for me, I didn't have all of that same experience. Mm-hmm. And when I watched it, I asked some questions about problematic timing or whatever may have been there. Yeah. But in a rewatch and in afterthought, so many things break down. And this is actually so. You talked about this positive. I'm going to pull to a negative really seriously and talk about pacing and speed. So there are two television shows I want to reference, and then I'm going to go to Game of Thrones. The first is Farscape, which probably 3/4 of the people out there watching have no idea what it is. This spectacular show that your wife, my daughter Stephanie, and I watched regularly. A fantastic science fiction series that Sci-Fi Channel had running. And when they got to their 3rd season, they were renewed for a 4th and 5th season. And at the end of the 4th season, as they were finishing shooting, like the wrap of their shooting, they were told the 5th season was canceled. And they ended on a cliffhanger. They had another season. Right. They were going to arc their way through to sort of almost the end of the story in the 5th season. Yeah. But they were canceled.
Gotcha.
A huge public outcry, and a movie gets made. They give in and they let them make a movie. And so they put the entire 5th season into a 2-hour television
They just condensed it all down.
They condensed the whole thing down. They stripped the bottle episodes and they put the major arc stories. And it moves so quickly. Yeah. And if it wasn't for the fact that I love Farscape, I would have been breathless, impossible. And there's a major death at the end of it, which I won't give away because I know no one's watched Farscape, so I'm not going to spoil it. And that major death is heartbreaking, and yet it moves so quickly through it. They introduce characters that you know would have been important in a season, but they need to be there to get through this arc. You know, the same thing happens.
You're going to say Firefly? Is that
with Firefly? Yeah. Firefly is the same thing happened. At the end, they get canceled, and they condense the entire next season into the movie Serenity. Yeah. But Whedon's a better filmmaker in some ways, and he has the scope of film, and so he strips all of the bottle episode stuff out, and he builds a single story arc that still feels a little bit rushed. The same thing happens with Newsroom on HBO, which is like appropriately matched to this, where they fit 2 seasons into one because they're just not going to make it through their run. And so they cheat characters disappear, whatever. That's what's happening here. I think that one of the problems is a longer episode isn't helpful. You need enough episodes.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Alec about this yesterday. I said there needs to be probably 4 to 6 more episodes in this season for it to work, and not an hour and 20-minute long episodes, like just 1 hour episodes, 4 to 6 more, and then you don't have to rush. Like, and we were talking about this before we started recording a little bit, was that all of the problems stem from lack of time for the showrunners. They know they only have so many episodes greenlit, and they can only do that many, so they have to cram. And then you have those character choices that are out of character. You have sloppy writing, and you have things like Rhaegal getting shot down out of nowhere.
In a senseless way.
Yeah,
right?
in a completely senseless way. Like Dany 100% would have seen those ships on the horizon. If they can see her, she can see them.
If they can see her and aim.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they don't miss.
Shooting blindly. No, 3 hard shots. Gosh, yeah, and it was shocking to the viewer. I mean, Steph gasped and said, "Oh my god, I can't watch."
Well, it's so violent. It was really violent.
Yeah, it was really bad. It was the next shot. It was that third shot really killed it. It was the nail in the coffin, right? But that all stems from rushing, and it's just they're making choices that are just. Like, I don't know why they're making these choices, but it has to do with
and they have to make the choices. Yeah. What ends up happening is like we say we don't know why because we don't know why they would. Right. But on the other hand, we do know why, and it's because it's about time. Yeah. And it's not about time when you extend an episode by 20 minutes, you don't gain 20 minutes. Right. Because you arc the episode to its story, not to its time. Right. So like that battle episode, if it had been an hour, we would have had 20 extra minutes, right? Yeah, right. But the 20 extra minute was going to be filled with battle in that episode no matter what. Yeah. But if we took the 20 minutes from 3 episodes, we get another piece where we can arc a whole story. For a whole story. And, we've lost, for all practical purposes, 7 hours of material over these 2 seasons being cut down, right? But you don't gain that back by minutes at the end of a show. They're bonus time. That's time to extend. It's one of the Battlestar Galactica things I'll say. Like Battlestar Galactica makes its series, and they had episodes they needed to run long, and they cut them down. Right. but they kept the arc of the episode within that time frame.
Right.
And we see episodes that go long. Walking Dead does that, where they run a long episode or something runs over. HBO does it, where something runs over. They let them have that extra time.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in Game of Thrones before. They've gone for an hour 10,
right.
Hour 15 before. But
it was extra time in the arc of the episode instead of the episode being crafted around 80 minutes. And that's a different story.
Right. It doesn't help the arc of the story as a whole. It's just for that time in that episode. Yeah, you're right. We're gonna re-record in a second because these cameras are gonna shut off.
Okay, good. So why don't we just take a break?
We're gonna pause
and we'll be right back.
Cool.
All right, hang on. So I guess I want to do this because last time it was weird, and we're back. So the timer's rolling again. We know what we've got. The video portion of this makes this very different than the audio portion, so you have to put up with the weird stops. So a positive from me, and that is music, straight up, hands down. The music.
That's not where I thought you were going.
This music in the series is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And the music in these season 8 episodes has been consistently brilliant. Over and over again, I have a desire to listen to the soundtrack.
Like in the car on your way to work?
I just want to hear the music from it. And it is so supportive of the action. And without being intrusive.
Well, that's funny you say that because I don't notice the music, and that's a testament to, I don't know, I can't pronounce his name, Ramin Djawadi or whatever, whatever his name is.
It's good enough.
It's close. I'm sorry, but yeah, he's brilliant. I mean, the soundtrack, the score throughout the entire series has been incredible. I mean, there's a reason that people. Dun, 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 dun. You can hum it to yourself.
One of the greatest theme songs of any television show.
Yeah.
And yet, individually, there's piece after piece, and I don't just mean like the big high pieces, where the killing of the Night King or the Sept explosion piece, that opening piece, that was it called I don't remember the name of it, but those individual pieces, but like throughout, the music really does support and yet live as art.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And not even just the score, but also the taking George's words and song lyrics that are in the book and translating them into music. Podrick's song and the song that we have Ed Sheeran sing for a little bit.
Yes, indeed. And the Rains of Castamere.
Rains of Castamere, obviously.
Which is not one of those pieces that sits, the music sits in your head.
And you hear it and your stomach drops.
Yep.
And so for somebody to transfer lyrics on a page to the screen and write music to it and actually create something that feels like it should be in that world is just a testament to how great of a musician and composer and songwriter Ramin, I don't know.
Well, and not more importantly, but equally important, the fact that he's been given the freedom artistically to do that, and that the show understands how to integrate that.
Right.
That to me is really critical, that they're not letting that music be lost. They're letting that be part of the active production of the piece.
Yeah. Right.
Which is great.
Yeah, they give him free control, free reign to do whatever he wants to do for the most part. I'm sure there's things they tell him, hey, maybe change this to that. But the music is great. The music is great in the show. You said I was going to be able to dump into something based off of that topic, and I can't think of anything to dump into.
What I want to ask you is, what were you thinking I was going to say?
I thought you were going to go to Missandei.
Really?
I did.
Well, go ahead. Tell me what you thought I was going to say, and then I'll.
So Missandei's death. There's mixed reaction.
Right.
To I have on my death pool. In the dead pool I'm in is I have her dying. Flat out, she's dead. Didn't have her dying the way she did die.
Right.
I think that is the way she probably had to die to get the reaction out of Grey Worm and Dany that they wanted the viewers to have. Again, I think it's rushed. I think you could have kidnapped Missandei and it would have been fine if we had more time. I also think her death in a different way would have been fine at the hands of the Mountain or at Cersei or Euron, something like that. So from a positive perspective, I think what they did there was good to advance the story. However, Oh, and along with that, I know. Okay, so there's a lot of reaction of like, okay, you put the once enslaved black woman back in chains and then cut her head off. And Westeros is a world of it's just white people. Like it's just white people, Caucasians. There's no Asians. There's no African Americans. The closest thing you have to diversity is Dorne, and they more so represent Caucasian Spaniards.
Right.
There's really nothing else. Everybody who is of diverse culture is over in Essos or on the Isle of North, where Missandei's from, right? So, so there's a little bit of controversy, right? Of we put the one of two African Americans on the show back in chains and then killed her in front of everybody. Do you find that is an issue, or do you think like the way they're advancing the story is okay? Because from my perspective, I don't think putting anybody else up there would have caused the same reaction for characters.
So the key, the way I look at it is this: it's about who's making the soup is how I decide whether or not it's seasoned well.
Okay, so like the writers in the room. If we had an African American or female writer in the room,
we had black writers and female writers in that room, I'd feel very different about that. In the same way, I would feel very different about the idea of Sansa and the Hound deciding that her abuse made her stronger.
Right.
It's very different for that to be said when you have people who understand that situation in the writing room.
Right.
There is a political component to everything that we have to acknowledge. I actually, I see their color on the screen and the fact that there are few people of color on the screen, and we have ultimately killed all the direwolves who are colored, right? We have all we have left is a white direwolf.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty white world there.
Yeah.
And that's problematic, right? But it's also the way that world is, unless we really look at Martin's work, where there's far more diversity.
Is there? Okay, cool.
There's far more diversity in Westeros, and some of those characters have disappeared because we've been cropping people around. Now they did add some diversity into it. We have Hota down in Dorne, who is black in the show and is not in the book, and all that stuff's there. It is disturbing that that's the choice. I'm not sure whether or not we need what the outcome of Grey Worm's relationship is, because for me the interesting arc for Grey Worm is what pain comes from love, not revenge desire.
Yeah.
You follow me? So I need now the time we're not going to get to see what it means to a guy who, he's a eunuch, right? Like he's had his sexuality removed.
Yeah.
And that made him a great warrior, supposedly.
Right.
And then he regains his sexuality in some way, whatever between them, right?
Yeah.
That ends up becoming romantic.
Right.
And now that's been taken away. In my head, I don't want to see him full of revenge. I want to know what it means to have to return to the empty place. And if that empty place is better or worse. That's an interesting story to me.
Yeah.
And so I think Missandei's death is viable. I just hope they don't throw it out because it's become an expedient choice.
That they're going to, though.
I know.
like that's the hard part is like Danny's going to do something stupid in the next episode. And this might be a good time to transition into what do you think is going to happen in the final two episodes. I think we could probably go back and forth on positives and negatives on the show for forever, but discussing for the next couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is going to go based on the way they're leading us to think? And they might totally throw us for a loop. I'm going to talk about Star Wars for just a second.
Good. Great.
So there's been a lot of in this most recent trilogy of who is Snoke? We don't know who Snoke is. Why aren't you giving us any information? No, he died. Spoilers. He does die. It's been out for a year, so you should have watched it by now. He dies in episode 8, and we don't learn anything about his past, anything like that. Whatever. People were complaining about we didn't get enough of him in Force Awakens. And my one thought, and again, I was talking to my friend Alec about it, and we were both saying, well, you didn't know who Emperor Palpatine was in episode 4, in A New Hope. You hardly knew who he was still in Empire.
Right.
You only really find out who he is in Return of the Jedi. So I don't know. I say all that because I don't know what they're going to do in the next 2 episodes. If they're leading us to think one way and they're going to totally flip us the other way for episodes 5 and 6. Dany might not do something stupid. She might. This might be the one thing that screws her head on to her shoulders and makes her actually think about what she's doing before she does it, rather than dismissing Sansa's need for rest. You know, if she did just listen to Sansa and take 1 week, her dragon probably wouldn't have gotten shot down in the sky, right? Like, so it's thinking about like, well, where is this going to go? And are they leading us to think one way and they're going to do something else, which they've done many times before? Or are they really just going to let this play out and how we're thinking it's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to try and imagine what's going to happen in what amounts to about 3 hours worth of television time, right? And they have done an adequate job, although not a job we may be pleased with, of stripping down characters. So we've gotten rid of Tormund. We don't have to worry about him anymore. He's off the table.
Yeah.
At least it appears to be off the table. Right. And Ghost as well. And so there's a story for them somewhere else that we don't need to worry about.
Right.
But for our main characters, they have things they need to do. And we know that the end game has to be the Cersei and throne issue, right? Like that's our end game. And there's each of our characters is aimed there somehow.
Right.
And I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but it looks like the Cleganes are going to go at it.
Yes, he did reference like there's only one thing that can make me happy. He said that in the last episode.
And it sure feels like
it's got to be killing his brother.
It's got to be it.
It has to be it.
There's the only thing left for him, right?
Yeah.
And that means he probably doesn't get out alive of that, right? Like this.
I was just going to ask, like, what do you think the outcome is going to be from the Hound? Do you think he's going to die with the Mountain? Do you think they're both just going to take each other out?
Yeah, I think the Hound living is a really cool choice. I don't think it's a choice that's going to be made, and I think that I would not be surprised if we see a re-envisioning of the previous sort of murder, right? Our Dornish death,
right.
That where the Hound has ended up losing, and instead of in that losing moment, his head gets crushed. In that losing moment, he does the thing that kills that kills the Mountain, and the Mountain is our last zombie, right?
Yeah,
like he's our last zombie.
For all intents and purposes, he is a zombie. He's been brought back to life. Yeah,
and there's this thing about that needs to be addressed, and so we'll see what happens. Who knows if a sword's going to kill him? Like we don't even know what that case is, and I think we're going to see Arya do some faceless thing. I think there's no doubt.
There has to be.
There's going to be a
it'll
faceless
be disappointing
moment.
if there's no faceless moment. I could see her. Cersei's on her list.
Right.
Is there anybody else alive that's on her list? Is the Mountain on her list?
I believe the Mountain's on her list. I don't remember the list clearly enough because we haven't heard it in season and a half.
She hasn't repeated it in forever. Right? Yeah. I think. If she's clearly going down to King's Landing to kill Cersei, like she straight out said it. If anybody's going to get in the castle alone, it's going to be her, and it's going to be wearing a Lannister outfit in some way, or it's going to be killing Qyburn and wearing Qyburn's face,
or it's going to be Littlefinger.
Right. Nobody. Like who knows who's dead? Right. Who knows from the north who's dead?
I mean, who knows? But I mean, everybody saw that. But who knows?
Right.
Maybe they don't because some of these rules don't apply.
Yeah. Right. We don't know. Yeah. We don't know what they don't know. So yeah, I think there has to be a faceless moment. It'll be disappointing because that's one of the things that they've seeded along the way, and if she doesn't use it for the final act of the show, it seems, well, what the heck did she do over in Bravos for 2 seasons?
Yeah. So, exactly.
Yeah, it has to happen. So the way they're leading me to think what's going to happen in the next episode, and you can tell what's going to happen based off of the directors for the show, right? We have Sapochnik doing 5. There's going to be a battle. We're going to see some Golden Company versus Jon and Dany in the Unsullied. I don't know
whoever is left.
I have no idea who's left. I don't know how many Knights of the Vale are still here. I don't know how many Dothraki. I was surprised there were even Dothraki left, but there are. I don't know if it's going to be on land, if it's going to be on sea. I don't know. I can't imagine it's going to be by boat because Euron just destroyed half their fleet.
Well, and the Golden Company's not interesting on a boat.
No, they're interesting on the ground, right? Without elephants, they're still interesting.
Right.
With elephants, I'm sure it would have been even more interesting. And I'm not bitter either, but
Well, we wouldn't have had Ghost if there were elephants.
Have Ghost. Well, they got rid of
like
Ghost.
Ghost
so
wouldn't have even appeared,
right?
Even though,
yeah.
for all practical purposes, he was a normal-sized animal.
yeah. He keeps changing sizes.
He keeps shrinking.
Yep. He's just
awful.
a big dog now. Anyway, I think the way they're leading me to think is Dany's gonna just start burning stuff. She's just gonna start burning things down. We don't want Grey Worm to go the revenge route, but I imagine he's gonna go the revenge. I would not be surprised if Grey Worm at the very end of Clegane Bowl steps in and gives a weakening blow to the mountain that allows the Hound to kind of finish him off. I think that would maybe be a little bit cheap, but I kind of hope they don't do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But yeah, I think she's going to start burning. I really think she is. They're really leading us to think that she's going to be a mad queen. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's the way they're making me think.
One of the things I've thought about, and I'm going to throw this out, is there's two things I want to say, I guess. Mm-hmm. One is that I always think of Arya and the Hound as Rocket and Groot. They remind me of Rocket and Groot.
Yeah.
And I can see that final battle being a moment where the Hound and Arya end up taking out the mountain. And in the last moment, as she said she would do, will you leave me to die? The Hound asks, and she says yes. She gets an opportunity at Cersei, and she goes for it, and the Hound gets killed
and leaves him to die.
And I could see that. The thing
that would be very satisfying. I think.
I think it'd be
that would be very satisfying. Yeah, that would be cool. Go ahead.
And the other, and completely in another thing for the future. So one of the things I think people miss about this whole story is the title, right? So it's Song of Ice and Fire,
right?
And everyone thinks it's Dany and Jon. And I don't believe
it's just
that.
Jon.
It's just Jon.
Yeah.
It's his story.
Yeah.
And if it's just his story, that means the throne has to be his at the end. Or
I think the
tragedy of the throne has to be his at the end.
It has to be his choice for the throne at the end.
It is his song. It's his story.
Yeah.
And what he chooses to do is where the story ends.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I haven't read all the books. I've only heard the theory. I think I watched season 1 to 3 in college, and I then heard the R plus L equals J theory. Right. Wasn't confirmed, and then I read the first book, and it was like, well, that 100%. Of course that's what it is. And it was at that moment when I learned of his lineage that I was like, oh, the Song of Ice and Fire is 100% Jon. He's Targaryen Stark, so it only makes sense for this to begin with Jon, as it did, as the underdog, almost in a literal sense, with Ghost being the runt of the litter and representing him. The underdog of the entire show, rising to become potentially the most powerful person in Westeros, and just as an overall theme, saying that it doesn't matter your status, how small you are. We've learned from Tyrion, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes, and he has obviously come in a similar arc to Jon. But as a theme, it doesn't matter how small, how down and out people think you are, like, you can still do huge things and lead people to great successes and just be a great person in general. Like, Jon is the most honorable person in the show now that Ned's been gone for 9 seasons or 7 seasons, however long Ned's been gone for. So yeah, like, I think it's going to end with him either choosing the throne or denying the throne or dying for the throne or for the realm, like,
and making some other decision that creates a new system or whatever it may be that he does. Yeah, you talk about him being on this journey, and it's this crazy Luke Skywalker journey.
Yeah, right.
It's the hero's journey in some way. It's just so well masked that the thing that Martin understands is you can't just do that story. It's been told too many times. Yeah. Because one of the complaints about Rey and the new trilogy is it's the same story.
Right.
But Jon's covering the same ground. The difference for me is that ground is covered through a different kind of darkness and through a world around it that isn't about his development. Yes. He's developing within the world, but it's not about his development.
Right. And I mean, I know in the hero's journey, there's always that mentor figure. To me, that mentor figure was G.R. Mormont.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his death sealed that. There always has to be that death. It's Gandalf's death in Lord of the Rings for Frodo. It's Obi-Wan's death in New Hope. And it's Dumbledore's death in Harry Potter.
Right.
There always has to be that death of the mentor, and he got that with Jorah Mormont, and that's what led him to become Lord Commander. So, I think it's interesting though. I don't see the whole series ending with an Iron Throne. I think it ends with his choice for the throne, but I think he's going to push it more towards a council or a group of people who are going to rule over Westeros collectively rather than a monarch being like a dictatorship, I think that they have reference to that too, because Dany witnessed it in Karth, I believe. They had the 13, I believe, right? And then they were all killed by blue-lipped warlocks, so that kind of was weird. He probably shouldn't have been on the council in the first place. He had blue lips and he was a warlock. Get him out of here. But yeah, I think that's my prediction on there's going to be no Iron Throne. We've seen the prophecy or the vision that Dany had in that tower of her walking through the throne room, and it's ashes. I thought it was snow when I first saw it, but
I think it's ashes.
Now I believe it's ashes, which again makes me feel like she's just going to start burning things, burning the entire place down. There's going to be no Red Keep left. Don't know how she's going to do it because there's a lot of scorpions sitting on the wall. So I don't know what her battle strategy is. But
there's a lot of scorpions on the wall.
And okay, can we go back to a negative for a second?
Sure.
We have 6 minutes. We're going to do this.
It's good. And I have one more thing we'll do aside from this. So go ahead.
Okay, so Cersei sends Bronn to go kill Tyrion and Jaime. And then Tyrion just shows up at her doorstep and she doesn't shoot him. And she also doesn't just destroy the 20 Unsullied and Dany and who else was out there with her? Grey Worm.
Right.
And she doesn't shoot the dragon. I feel like it would have been very much Cersei's character to just obliterate all of those people. Do you agree with that?
Well, and it wasn't like she had one crossbow.
No, there was like 6 of them sitting up there.
And they're gigantic.
Yeah.
And it seems like she could have done a lot of damage. I mean, did a lot of damage to the boats.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I agree with you there. And I would say that there is a preponderance of crossbows currently in this show. And it may be more crossbows than we can stand. Bronn has a crossbow. There's crossbows on the battlements. There's crossbows on the boats.
Is there symbolism with crossbows?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of it. If I do, we'll bonus that somewhere along the way. I can't think of it at all. And I say that it takes a long time to load a crossbow. And that's a thing. But it's also, I mean, they're everywhere, in the show. They are the solution.
And Qyburn had the ability somehow to upgrade, like very quickly upgrade and get them on boats.
They're so big. And I wonder about the physics of the boats. Like, is there
Do you
not
think
an
it would be
action,
top heavy?
Or an action reaction? Like that giant bolt goes. Does the ship
have to
go back? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's all madness to me.
And I don't know how he's aiming, and because he's sitting in the chair, right? He's sitting in this chair.
Aiming well.
Well enough to hit a dragon 3 times, and there's no way it's just him shooting that. There must have been the other 2 arrows come from 2 other boats. Like that was my assumption.
It
has to be. But if it is Euron shooting those 3 shots, then it's completely implausible. But like he's sitting in this chair and he's pointing like, take me right, take me left, and like there's no way that they would know when to stop.
Oh, it's just right, exactly.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The physics of that whole thing and like the actual. Like it would make more sense for him to have like a hand crank.
Yeah,
for him to turn the chair. I don't know.
And if you're gonna make giant crossbows, make a hand crank.
Crank.
Like it seems to me like it's not a big step for Qyburn.
There needs to be a little bit more
extra
engineering for the person shooting the boat.
Right. Qyburn's brought someone back to life, and we have drawbridges. We can probably have a crank.
We can have a crank.
We can do that. So my last prediction has nothing to do with the actual last 2 episodes. It's this. I think that we're gonna see at least one more book in this series. I don't know whether we're going to see both. Martin's not young, and there's a lot of writing to do, and he writes slowly. But to some great extent, I believe that book has been held up after they got off book.
Right.
I think that thing may have been finished during the past year and a half.
He's just been sitting on it, waiting for them to
because
end.
If he published it now, it would be in conflict plot-wise with what's happening.
Right.
And that conflict would hurt the book and the show. it doesn't help either one.
Do you think there was an NDA signed somewhere?
I would imagine somewhere
George,
along the way.
Can't publish until the show's done.
And you think about this, it could be an NDA. It could also be the publishing company saying, we're going to hold this because it's going to be confusion, and we're going to get a big boost because everyone's going to want Game of Thrones stuff, and the new prequel doesn't come out for a while.
I already started rereading the first book.
Yeah, here is the thing that you want to see the real story. That's a playable, as opposed to, you can't say that against the show.
Right. That damages the show.
But you can say it afterwards, and you can gain. So that we may see one, we may see two. I don't know.
Well, let's hope he finishes. I hope for two.
Yeah. I do. But if he finishes one, we probably get through the Night King, and that would be a satisfactory conclusion to the story. And so for me, that's what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to see that there.
I agree. I think it's gonna come out in like a month after this show's done.
Or the pre-sales will come out so they can get the numbers up, right? Like whatever it may be. Yeah. So it'll be a good summer for reading then, I guess. For sure.
Cool.
All right. I think we're done.
Good chat. Well, let's close it out. We'll just wing it, I guess.
Yeah,
this is the second time closing it out, so let's see if we do it right. Thank you guys for watching the Racking Focus podcast, episode 2/bonus material. We would love for you to support us on Patreon and get at us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Twitter at PodFocus and on Instagram at Racking Focus Podcast.
You should also email us if you want us to see a particular movie. We need suggestions. Tonight could have been Detective Pikachu, which we avoided, so we did this instead. So if you want to do that, you can contact us at rackingfocuspod@gmail.com. Please follow us on Twitter. Please communicate with us across the board. You can visit us on Facebook as well. If you want to go to Facebook, you can read a blog post I wrote about the way that the episode 8.3 may have saved the film industry because of it being so dark. So there's lots more to hear from us, and we're glad you're listening.
We are actually going to see John Wick 3 next week. It was supposed to be this week. It's going to be next week. So if you haven't watched John Wick 1 and 2, go watch those. And we are going to have a little break in between recording next week. We would love for you to tweet at us your thoughts for John Wick 3.
So if you see John Wick 3 on opening or the second night, tweet to us or email us. Give us some content we can respond to as we sit in our second focus point on Sunday after we've seen the show and had a conversation.
Yep. As always, thank you guys for watching Racking Focus Podcast or listening to Racking Focus Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. And we will catch you guys next time.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Racking Focus Podcast.